Jessica Noble. Jessica serves as an in-house counsel for Nanoracks, which is a leader in the commercial utilization of low Earth orbit. She advises on a variety of topics, including contract drafting, negotiating, and corporate structure and export controls. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Jessica Noble.
Good morning, everyone. First thing I'd like to say is I apologize. I am not an astronaut. I believe the person who was originally supposed to have this speaking slot was an astronaut, and instead you all get a lawyer. So, my day job is as an attorney for a commercial space company. But for today, I didn't really want to talk about the law specifically. A lot of people actually find that really boring for whatever reason. But there's a question that has been bugging me over the course of my career in the space industry, and that is, what does it mean for a company to be commercial? And I want to step back and look at this not just from the perspective of space, but I want to take you all as far back away from it as I could really think of, and start with the Washington Nationals. Now, what does this have to do with space? Now, some of you may know, some of you may not be as interested in it, but the Nationals Park is not something that's owned by the Nationals team. It is actually owned by the city and run by Events DC, actually helping us out with all of the satellite festivities today and for the rest of this week. But this is a government-owned and run facility. Now, when we think about the Washington Nationals as a baseball team, we don't think of them as a government contractor. We go to the games, we buy their tickets, we buy food. This is a commercial enterprise. Moving on, I am a Florida girl at heart. I will always be a Florida girl at heart. But Florida has some of the most absurd highways and interchanges I have ever seen in my life. This one out of Broward County. But who is maintaining the interstate highway system? It is the federal government. The Federal Highway Administration is tasked with restoration and renovation of all of our country's roads. Now, there are millions of people every day who traverse our interstate highway system. Some of those are private people, some of it is private industry, some of it is government. Do we think of the use of government roads as government contracting? No. This one is a little bit closer to home for a lot of us, especially here at Satellite. When we take out our cell phones and we make a call or we send a text to our friends, that signal is using spectrum. Spectrum that is operated, or not operated, but that is maintained and deconflicted by a federal agency, the Federal Communications Commission. Now, we see over here an absolutely absurd use of palm trees to try to disguise cell towers. But that's where we're at these days. But the use of these palm trees or poles to look like palm trees, for the most part, across the United States, makes use of certain types of government processes called easements or rights of way. Same thing goes for the fiber that runs underground and underwater. Government-provided easements and rights of way allow for commercial companies to be able to transmit the signals that we use in our day-to-day lives. do we consider the communications companies that are taking advantage of those cell towers or those underground fiber lines to be government contractors simply because they make use of those government platforms? I submit to you, no. We don't think of Verizon primarily as a government contractor. We think of them as a commercial entity. And for my last example, look at the aviation industry. Now, I use Southwest. This one is a little close to home because Southwest is basically the unofficial airline of Nanoracks, LLC. We use them for basically all of our domestic travel. They haven't paid me to say that, just a fact. But the aviation industry provides planes not just to commercial airliners, but to government customers. The airports that these planes fly in and out of every day, almost entirely across the United States, are owned by the government, whether it is a municipality, whether it is the state, or whether it is the federal government. These are all government platforms. The airspace that these planes traverse is maintained, or not maintained, but is governed by air traffic control, which is an agency of the FAA. So in all of these examples, we are looking at commercial industries that make use of government-provided platforms and services. And I actually want to tell a story that I found out while doing some research just on the aviation side. Back in the 1960s, the US Army submitted or put out an RFP for a new type of cargo aircraft. And they used a new type of contracting mechanism at the time, which was all the rage. I'm sorry, I had to talk a little bit about law, so please forgive me for this. But they used a new type of contracting mechanism, and it was a form of fixed firm price contracting. So there was one price that the companies were to submit their bids for, and that was to be it. None of this cost plus contracting. They wanted it to be done efficiently and at cost. They ended up using a down select process. So at the beginning, there were a number of companies that were involved in the bidding, and then the federal government narrowed it down to a couple more companies, and it ended up between Boeing and Lockheed. Now, eventually, Lockheed won the contract for what would eventually go on to become the C-5. But a couple of years later, Boeing introduced the Boeing 747, which was based almost entirely on the designs that they had submitted in this bid for the C-5. Now, this contracting process sounds a little bit familiar to me in the space industry. When we look at this situation, did anyone consider that Boeing's aviation business or that they were purely government contractors after that? No, they took the design that they had worked on and applied it for commercial purposes. So we've had a couple of examples, or a few examples rather. We've looked at municipal sports stadiums, looked at the use of highways, telecommunications, and aviation. So the question that I really grapple with when we look at these commercial industries is, why do we apply a different standard when we look at these companies? And it's been a subject in space media. It has been a subject at conferences, a question of, can a company truly be commercial if it relies on government funding? And I apologize again, I sent this slide off and realized right afterwards that there was another addition I'd like to make to that. Not just if they rely on government funding, but if they make use of government platforms. Because there has been an assertion that if you're a company that is making use of government contracts or government platforms, that you are not commercial. However, I believe that you still can be considered a commercial company if you rely on government contracts, but the test is to see who are their customers. Do they have private customers outside of these government contracts? In which case I submit to you, yes, these are commercial companies. And I am so sorry, Mike French, you are not up yet. So, at the end of the day, when we look at this discussion of what's commercial, what's not, what is old space, what is new space, the question I think is really out there for companies that are existing in this sphere is, do you have the agility to meet the demands of the commercial marketplace? Thank you.